All right, guys. Hope everybody's having a good day today. First off, Happy New Year for anybody who's joining us for the first time this year and joined us last year. Welcome to the first webinar Wednesdays from XenTegra. I got a great guest today, PrinterLogic, and we're going to be talking about how to eliminate print servers and make your printing lives a lot easier. So on the phone, I got obviously myself. I'm your host. I'm the CMO, CTO of XenTegra. I also got Eric Johnson, who is the PrinterLogic guru and SE. And then finally, Amy Ray, who is our awesome channel account manager. And we also have Jeff Vernon on the phone as well. So Jeff is on the channel team as well. So welcome, guys, and thank you for joining. All right, so we have a packed hour, but the goal is simple. We don't want to put you guys to sleep, so we're going to do a lot of demos and keep it interesting. So hopefully, when you guys have a question, definitely put it out there through the Q&A dialogue. We want to make sure we get all questions answered. I'm going to keep a task on it, and I throw them in where I see fit. So we're going to go through, who is PrinterLogic, just in case you haven't heard of these guys. And then Eric's going to take us through a nice demo and really focus there on some key things that PrinterLogic can do to help you guys in your printing day to day, and also, hopefully help you lower costs around printing. And then finally, I'll cap off with some final actions and Q&A, and we'll call it quits. All right, so a couple housekeeping things. Everybody is on mute. However, if you are interested in asking any questions, at the end, I will offer the ability to unmute you and you can ask your question live. However, there is a Q&A dialog box, so feel free to put your question in there throughout the duration of this webinar today. I will be monitoring it, and I will throw it in every now and again to keep Eric on his game and give him some good questions. So definitely make sure you take use of that and make this webinar a little fun and a little interesting. All right, so I got a couple polls. I always like to do polls. Helps me level set and also helps us make sure we cover some key points throughout the webinar. So the first poll, and it also makes sure that you guys are awake. All right, so the first poll is a fun one. Just simple test out there. Make sure you guys get this poll. Is printing an issue across your environment? And this is a trick question. And again, I can't see who's voting, so don't worry, it is anonymous. And again, this helps us gauge the conversation. So let's try to get up to at least 75%, and everybody is voting, and it's climbing quickly. All right, going once, going twice, and we're gonna put it out there. So a good chunk of you say, yep, I spend way too much managing my printing. And 33% of you think you have it under control, but you're going to hopefully walk away and have some food for thought today. All right, so the next poll, where is printing the biggest issue in your environment? Again, pick the one that you think is the biggest issue. I know you could probably tick all these off, but pick the one that is your biggest hurdle today. And again, let's try to get these numbers up. It will help us gauge the conversation. And again, I can't see who's voting, so don't worry. All right, about 3 more seconds. Let's get this up to at least 80%. Going once, going twice, and 3 times. All right, so we got a good mix. So it's a good spread, and I'm confident PrinterLogic can hit all these points. And you're going to see some cool stuff. Eric's going to show you some mobile printing today. He's going to show you the interface and how easy it is. And then we'll talk a little bit about how it integrates with Citrix and or VMware or virtual computing. So, all right, and then the final post is more of a curiosity question, but it does play into printing because it is going to be a big issue as we move into 2019 and beyond. Are you using Office 365, aka M365? And this, again, helps us gauge kind of some more conversations because PrinterLogic is doing some stuff with Azure and Office 365. All right, a couple more seconds. Let's get this up. Again, I can't see who's voting, so don't worry. Going once, twice, 3 times, and a good spread here. Wow. So a lot of you guys still have Exchange on-prem. A lot, and this is pretty much what I see. A good chunk of you still have hosted Exchange, currently deploying and on the radar. And for those who use Chrome Enterprise, awesome. PrinterLogic, hopefully is going to be able to help there as well. And it's good to know. So thank you for taking part in those polls. Again, that helps us gauge the conversation and help us make sure you guys get full value out of this webinar today. All right, so hopefully you saw some of the social. Again, the goal here is how do you eliminate your print servers, and PrinterLogic can help with that. And if you follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc., you can see I have a little fun with images and social media. So yes, printing still is a thing. Even if you ask our millennial friends, people still do print. Printing is still prevalent in the enterprise. Depends on the vertical, but yes, printing is still a thing. And people, for some reason, think, oh, I don't print anymore. But in healthcare, finance, etc., printing is still out there. So again, I'm going to pass the mic over to Eric now, and he is going to take us through, who is PrinterLogic, and jump into a demo. So I'm going to make you presenter, Eric, and pass the baton and mic to you. And you better be ready for questions, because I'm going to throw some questions your way, buddy.
All right, perfect. Go ahead and interrupt me at any point, even if I'm making a great point. Just interrupt me, keep me on my toes, okay? All right, so as far as PrinterLogic is concerned, I just want to give you guys a little synopsis of who we are and what we do. So you can see there on the screen, PrinterLogic's mantra is to eliminate print servers. And what we actually do is we help IT professionals eliminate all the print servers that they have and deliver a highly available serverless print infrastructure. So what we're doing is we're providing a centrally managed direct IT platform that will allow you to empower your end users with features like mobile printing, secure release printing, and many advanced features that your legacy print environments and applications can't provide. That's what we do at PrinterLogic. We were founded in 2001, and we have over 2,000 customers in over 150 countries and over 170 employees. Here are some different global customers that we have, some names that you might recognize, some different logos. As you can see here, there's a lot of different types of environments. You can look at a company like Aon versus 7-Eleven versus Dollar General and see that we're dealing with a lot of different industry verticals. So really, anybody that has a printing infrastructure and wants to optimize that infrastructure can look to our software to help them optimize that infrastructure. Like I said, our mantra is the elimination of the actual print servers, right? So I just wanted to highlight a few benefits of eliminating those print servers as a whole. So one of the things we can do when we get rid of print servers is we'll be able to eliminate the associated WAN traffic there, which is going to play really well for those of you that during the poll articulated that you're having trouble sometimes in a Citrix environment. One of those things is the latency due to WAN traffic. That's a challenge because you're communicating, all across your WAN to have that job spool on the print server and to deliver the right pieces of the puzzle in that environment. So that's a big benefit for us. The other component is central management, right? Instead of having multiple servers, we'll give you a single pane of glass, and that's what I intend to show you during the demonstration today, is that single pane of glass management for Printer Installer. We also have those integrated modules. I'll show you a little bit about mobile printing, reporting, and then also the pull printing or secure release printing. We also have an end user portal that's going to make it simpler for your end users to provision their own printers, and I'll show you a little bit of that. We kind of talked about those VDI environments and simplifying that. And then again, a print server in your infrastructure is going to act as a point of failure. If it goes down, sure, you can have redundancy models in place and you can have multiple servers, you can spin up VMs and things like that to try to deal with that. But the reality is that if you kind of distribute out your print environment as it grows, your server infrastructure grows as well, and you introduce more points of failure into your architecture. So in our model, we're doing direct IP printing, which means there's no requirement on our application server that's going to require the jobs to be spooled on that server. Everything is done as a direct IP print job. So even if your internet went down in our cloud-based solution, you would still be able to print. If our server were to ever go down, everybody can still print. You could print for several days as you try to work out other problems that might occur from that situation where you had an outage. So we won't be a burden in your environment. When you introduce us, we'll be able to actually optimize that print infrastructure. So now what I'm going to do is go into that live demonstration of our software and kind of give you some eyes and also some ears on what the product actually does. So here I have my instance of Printer Cloud, and this is my administrator console, right? So overall, just from an architecture perspective, this is really simple. I do have a document that we'll distribute to you so you can kind of see the overall architecture of the software. But it's pretty simple. What we do is we host this administrator console in AWS. We push out the client agent down to the workstations, and this is what that client agent looks like. This client agent is in communication with the administrator console, right? So as we have print jobs that take place, as we push down configurations and things like that, this client is what creates that interaction, and it communicates over port 443. This little client here runs as a system service with administrator rights, so we don't require elevated privileges for our end users. And one of the other really cool things about it is we provide it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So you'll have that freedom to centrally manage all sorts of different operating systems in your infrastructure from a single pane of glass. And again, so we're providing this as a PKG, a DEB, and an MSI file. So you can distribute this however you currently distribute those package types. Really easy to push out to that workstation. And then also there is that self-service portal that I mentioned. So this is kind of a cool feature that allows an end user to self-install their own printer. So part of the platform is we like to eliminate scripting and GPOs from your infrastructure because those can be challenges. There can be complexities that are introduced as you start to try to script and GPO out your deployments and things like that. So we can pull that away from your infrastructure, and we can still do deployment from an administrative perspective or from an end user perspective. So I want to show you that end user perspective here. What I've done is I've set up a few different sites, and each user can kind of click around and find different printers at different sites like this. They can have a map that helps them choose a printer based on their proximity to that printer, and they can go ahead and self-install that printer very easily. You can see, even if I don't have a map up here that's interactive for the end user, I also have the printers listed out here per site. So it's very simple to deal with that kind of thing. And that's a valuable feature for end users to provision their own printers. And it will work even if I'm on a Mac or a Linux workstation and I have a different driver that's associated. I'm still okay. It'll be the same experience for each user regardless of their operating system. So taking a step back, I just want to show you this design here. So I've got some different folders here, and this is how I organize my infrastructure if I'm an administrator. I build out a tree structure. I have printer objects inside of that tree structure, and you can see here at the top of my screen, different tools are available based on what I click on. If I click on this service host device, I have a few different options for mobile printing that I can configure, and I'll go into some of these in a little more detail in just a moment. If I click on a folder, I have some different permissions as well, whether it's setting up that map feature, and again, that's just done very simply. Each printer icon that appears inside of this management console is available in the HQ folder, populates here, and once I upload a web-based image, which is what this is in the background, I just drag and drop that out there, save it, and that changes live. I also have alerts. I have security to govern access here to these different folders and things like that. So I have a lot of different management components that make it really easy for me to centrally manage my infrastructure. I want to go over quickly what it's like to capture the printers out of your environment, because we've got some great tools to help you do that very easily. One of the most common ones is going to be right here under this import-export option, and we're going to be able to import Microsoft printers into Printer Cloud as direct IP printers. So literally what we're doing is we are capturing the printers that exist on your print server right now, You just enter the host name of whatever your print server is, and I've already done that, so I have that here. And it allows me to populate all of the queues that exist on this print server and migrate those to my new location. So if I want to stand up a site, let's say that I decided to add a site in North Carolina, and this is a print server servicing that area, I literally just click on whichever printers I want, choose the folder. It's going to turn that green, letting us know that it's ready to import, and then we will actually import these queues. So what it does when it imports the queues, very simple. It captures the printer name, location, comment field, web interface, install URL. You'll get your port information here. We can also do host names, not just the IP addresses. And it's also going to collect the drivers that you're currently using for this device. So that's one of the other benefits of using that tool. It's going to pick up everything that you're currently using, bring that into our interface, and those will still exist on your print server. So as we talk about implementing this into one of your environments, we do offer a free proof of concept of this software. You can test it yourself. You can import as many printers as you want, and then you'll just push out the client agent to whichever workstations that you want to test with. So if it's you that's on this webinar, or if it's a small group of IT professionals in your environment, you can control the distribution of our clients, and that will mean that all the rest of your infrastructure still functions as it's been previously designed to do. The only thing that will change is the people who have our client agent on the workstation. So the client, once it gets pushed out to your workstation, it is going to, like I said, run as a system service with administrator rights. So we don't have to have our end users having elevated privileges to participate in using the system. And the client is also going to go through the user's devices and printers folder. It's going to search for any printers that they have in that devices and printers folder that exists here in this administrator console. So those ones that you've imported, and it's going to auto convert those over to being managed by Printer Cloud, and they'll become direct IP printers as well. So that's kind of the process for the rollout, just 2 simple steps. We also have an authorization code that will secure communication between the client on this workstation and the instance of Printer Cloud that you've created. So if you see here in the URL, mine is called channels.printercloud.com. During that free trial, you can set up your own. So whether you're with XenTegra, maybe you have XenTegra.printercloud, maybe whatever your organization's name is, you can set that up as your own Printer Cloud instance. And again, like I said, we do a free trial of that. You're welcome to test it out, and you can be supported by the engineers at PrinterLogic to help you through the process, or you can do it as your own kind of self-service model. We have support and training videos, guides, all sorts of different things to get you on the ground running. So I would say contact your XenTegra representative if you're interested in doing this, and they can help you get set up to do a proof of concept of our software. Now, you've seen me talk about the things that we collect. I want to show you some of the benefits from a management perspective of the software. So I think it starts right here in the driver section. We're really well known for our driver and profile management. What I can do here is I've got this created printer. I can create different profiles for the drivers that are associated here. So you can see as I go through this, I have a repository of all sorts of different manufacturers' drivers. This is not pre-populated. This is actually coming from your environment. So when you migrate from your print servers, like I said, you can collect all the data off of that print server and populate your drivers. If you ever need to add in a new driver, it's really simple. All we're looking to do is collect an INF file. So let's say that maybe you don't have a print server. Maybe you have a direct IP environment that's not as effectively managed as you'd like it to be. We can deploy a discovery tool that will find all of your printers there, and it will populate this interface here with all the printers that you have. And then you'll have to come in and upload new drivers in that case, but you can select any driver out of your environment. And that's how you're going to build your repository. And again, we will support any signed driver. So we're not looking to introduce a universal driver system to you necessarily. We want you to use the drivers that you want to use that give you the best features that you have. So you can use, like I've got an HP universal driver here, but you could use any device-specific driver. You can use a Citrix UPD. We're not going to limit the scope of what you're able to pull in as long as it's a signed driver. You can see we do that for Mac and Linux as well. Now, I also have this ability to maintain my repository in a more effective way. So let's go down to that HP Universal driver. You can see this one's a 2016. I could probably grab a 2018 at this point. And maybe I've tested it out. Maybe I've decided, yeah, I want to replace all the old 2016 versions of this driver with a new one. I can click replace here, replace with a new driver. It's going to tell me all the places that I'm currently utilizing that old driver. When I say OK, easy. I'm just going to upload that INF file, and it will replace that across the whole infrastructure in the places where that current driver is being utilized. Now that's going to happen right after a user either starts up or a check-in of that client. So this client, I can do a refresh configurations, and that will tell the client to check with the Printer Cloud server and see if there are any relevant changes to my workstation. In other cases, that client is either going to check in right after logon, like you see here. So those are kind of your two options. So we really avoid a lot of WAN traffic. And again, this is typically just metadata that's being translated back and forth. So we should see major decreases in the amount of WAN traffic that's being dealt with in a printing infrastructure. Now, this option specifically here says profiling options. So the point of this is that I can actually set up different profiles based on the drivers that I'm using. So any feature that you're going to find under your preferences for your driver can be set up as an existing profile that you start to consistently push out. So in this case, I've only set up black and white duplex printing for this HP device. And I can come down here and I can say, I'd like to enable this profile to reapply after each print job. This means that every time a user goes to print, I've set it up so they're black and white duplex printing. Now they do have the freedom in our software to override this setting. So you can imagine each time that they print, if they need to print color in this case, they would have to override this duplex feature when they start to select their printing preferences as they send that job through. So we can kind of control behavior. We're not necessarily locking them down completely unless you want to pull in a driver that has specific features that are locked out completely. But you do have a mechanism of control and you can change operational behaviors as a whole. So that's one thing that we do very effectively is the driver management side of this. Another thing that's, I think, really important to what we're doing here is the deployment of those printers. So in the scenario I described before, where you are taking the printers off of your print server and you're pushing out a client to users' workstations, remember, it's going to convert those queues that already exist on the workstation. So if you implement our product, you don't necessarily have to go through and redefine all of the ways that you deploy printers. The printers are just going to exist on the workstations that currently exist there. If you do want to make changes or deploy new printers or set up new policies, very simple in our product. You can come to the Deploy tab, which I've done here, go to Add. You'll be able to integrate with Active Directory, so you can push out printers by using a security group, by using a container or organizational unit. You can enter that here just like adding somebody to a security group and create that deployment that way. You can also step in and do, let me skip over IP address because there's a little bit more detail to that I'll share, but hostname is an example, and you can see some hostname deployments on my screen right now. There's also MAC address. You can see that on my screen as well. So a wide range of different deployment strategies. And then getting back to IP address range, this is a really cool one. A lot of people really like this. So what we do with an IP range is we create the object. Right here under HQ, I can click New IP address range, and it's just going to ask me to name it and create a range. Now what we're looking to capture in this range are the end users actually. So if you're an end user that falls inside of this IP address range, I can set it up so you receive a deployment of printers. So it's basically printer deployment based on your proximity to those printers. Now in this case, I've got these 6 different printers that will automatically go out to anybody who occupies this IP address range. One of the cool things about this is I could leave our Utah headquarters and I could go to North Carolina where we also have an office. When I show up in North Carolina, my printers from headquarters that are deployed this way will drop off of my workstation. The printers that are in North Carolina, if they're deployed by IP address range, they'll automatically populate on my workstation. So I can go about my printing needs without really even having to give it a second thought. And if I do accidentally print something, it's not going to go back to my headquarters. It's going to go to a printer that's out in our Raleigh, North Carolina office. Then when I'm done with my travels to Raleigh, I can come back down to our headquarters in Utah. The Raleigh printers drop off, the headquarters printers pick back up, and I didn't really have to do anything to make that happen. Very simple deployment strategy. The other cool thing that we can do,
Eric, a
yeah,
question came in that's around that context, and there's a couple other questions, but I'll start with this one.
sure, yeah.
Um, we're the question is that the IP address range of the endpoint or the virtual desktop? So kind of context-based question on what you're talking about right now.
Sure. So it kind of depends on how we create our deployment, because if those, it kind of just depends on what you want. Basically what happens is where we deploy our client agent is where that picks up. So if our client agent exists like on your Citrix server and you want to do prints that way, then we can target that as well. If I come into this report, I can kind of show you a good example of that. So here under the workstation reports, I can see all the different endpoint devices, and I can deploy that way based on it's basically where the client exists. So if we access like a Citrix session, then we can deploy based on that Citrix session as well. The same would be true for like a terminal server environment. We can use that client to deploy kind of however we'd like to do it. So you'll have both options available to you.
And then another question came in earlier, and I want to make sure we hit it because it might get too far away.
Sure.
What happens to print jobs on a VDI, so a virtual desktop, when a user logs off their session, not disconnect, so they fully log off? Is the job queued up someplace other than the VDI itself?
So the job is going to exist where the client exists. So kind of just piggybacking off of that same idea that we talked about with the deployment. So if they log off of their session and they've printed something, that's going to be held. It's a locally held job basically. So it just kind of depends on your deployment scenario. If you generated that print job from your workstation, that's where it is. If you generated from the session, then that's where it is.
Okay, so the queue would go away if they did a full log off.
Yeah, if they did a full log off.
Okay, cool. And then another question came in. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get them all. I want to add, and this is from Peter. I want to add a new driver for Macs to use printers already in our PrinterLogic environment. Does that have to be done from a Mac OS machine?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we upload the drivers, we're going to be going from the operating system that's selected. So yeah, if the driver doesn't already exist in your repository, upload it from the existing system, whether that's Mac or Linux or Windows. Good question. Once that's there, you'll be able to centrally manage it and push it out and things like that. But yeah, good point of clarification.
And a final question, and then I'll let you continue on, so to speak.
Okay.
Does this software work with printing billing tools like CopyTrack?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do, how you're capturing that information. So we do have a reporting suite that I'll show you what we're able to pick up. But yeah, you can use other softwares with our product. Maybe some testing is necessary depending on which one you're working with and how it kind of functions overall. If it's requiring a print server, we can still work in your infrastructure with an existing print server and help you manage those queues. The goal is to kind of eliminate that point of failure in your architecture, but yeah, we're very compatible. We can sit alongside just about anything.
All right, cool. So I'll let you continue forward. I'll throw some more questions in as we go. They're rolling in, so be ready.
Okay, perfect. And Pete, really quick, do I have access to those questions as well? Can I log in and answer those?
Yeah, yep, you do. And
Okay, Perfect.
and you'll get a copy of every single question we get asked today. So don't worry.
Awesome. Perfect. I was just thinking that after I turn rights back over to you, maybe I can go in there if we haven't covered everything. So, okay. So getting back to the deployment side of things, I talked about some of the different individual deployment mechanisms. We looked at each of these, but we didn't look at advanced group. Advanced group is pretty simple. Basically, what we're doing with that is we're allowing you to pair together any of these components for deployment. So if you want to pair, like I can think of an example, like maybe at a school district, right? Maybe we have students in one organizational unit and faculty in another organizational unit, but they're going to share the same IP address range. But maybe in this scenario, we want to push out, maybe we'll push out black and white printing to students and color printing to faculty. So that might require separate queues, and maybe I just want to automate that, make it really simple. In that case, I could pair the OU of faculty with the IP address range, and then choose a printer deployment that way, and then do another deployment with students paired with the IP address range, and that way you have to meet both criteria. So our system is going to check if you're in the correct OU, and then also the correct IP address range, and make that printer deployment. And the advanced groups can get basically as complex as you want with these different factors that you see here. So we can have multiple groups. We can have host name, like we could do a host naming convention and target kind of from a wildcard perspective and pair that with all sorts of different things, MAC addresses, whatever we want. You can kind of create your own system of deployment there and create those multiple layers if you need to. And then again, the self-service portal is still an option here as well for deployment. So you can publish kind of both options for your end users, and you can choose to secure the self-service portal as well. So maybe in this case, I don't know if anybody noticed this on the webinar, but this is actually the floor plan of the TV show The Office. And I've got Michael's printer here, right? Maybe I want to make it so Jim and Dwight cannot add and print to Michael's printer. If Michael is in a certain security group, like a manager security group or something like that, and Dwight's in an assistant to the regional managers group, I can hide this printer from the assistant group and make it only visible to the managers group for deployment. So we have control over the individual printers or over the folders themselves as well. You can also restrict this by IP range too. So if I'm in North Carolina, maybe I could avoid seeing the Utah, Texas, Missouri locations as well. So you have options to secure that. So I think that's a pretty good summary of the driver management and the deployment of printers. I want to briefly touch on a few other things. We mentioned that, at the beginning, we're able to do things that your current legacy environment does for you, so we can actually replace that print server and then give you features that it doesn't have to offer you. So we've gone over some features that it doesn't offer you. Now I want to talk about some things that you may be used to dealing with that you'll want to see in this product. One is queue management. So here I can see jobs that are stacked in the queue. If I see a job that's held up in the queue, I could check the status of a printer. And I have the ability within that queue to send a remote stop signal down to the client to kill those jobs in the queue. So I can purge the queues as well and manage those effectively. Status tab is going to do an SNMP query, and it's going to find out what's going on with the printer. So in this case, I've got a printer that's offline. Obviously, that could produce some problems in my infrastructure. So we're going to see things like the serial number. We're going to see all these great details from the SNMP query. And we'll do SNMP version 1 and 2 in our Printer Cloud product. There is an on-prem product called Printer Installer that will do SNMP version 3 as well. So if some of you are not leaning towards cloud technologies yet, we still have a solution for you that will be on-prem that will have all the features that I'm showing you. But just to give you an idea, yeah, that status monitoring is in place, and we can pair that with alerts. So maybe in the future, I would like to know if one of these error conditions populates. I can go to the alerts tab, and I can set it up so that I'm alerted whenever that printer goes offline, if it has low paper, no paper, low toner, no toner, if it's jammed, whatever I care about here in this list, I can choose that, and then I can send that to somebody. So in this case, I'm going to send it to myself, but I could send this to a help desk group. I could route this into a ticketing system. If you have a ticketing system that can create that ticket based on an email, we can do that as well. And it will send the details of this to wherever we've specified it to go. So you can kind of actively monitor your infrastructure at this point and see what's going on with your printer fleet. We also have a tool here that's going to allow you to capture the status of all your printers with errors, so you can really monitor this effectively and kind of see the printers that you might have that are having some challenges. Another thing that I think is really important here, we talked about assigning those emails over to different users in the infrastructure to notify them. These are the different accounts that exist in my InterCloud environment. So these are all users that can log in. We have a couple different ways to deal with this. So we've got Active Directory groups and users that way, or we've got PrinterCloud local users. It's all whether or not you want to connect your Active Directory. Once I do this, I create a user. I can assign roles to them or privileges with access to certain folders. So most of these people have access to the folder location from the root node all the way down through. Here's one that's restricted into a main office in my Utah branch. And each of these are roles down below that you can use to apply to these users. So I'll just give you an example. I've highlighted administrator. I click view here. It's going to tell me all the things that a administrator can do. So as I click through these, it will give us descriptions as to what those permissions actually do. I can choose view or modify control to the features as well, and basically build out through role-based access controls the kind of roles that I need in my infrastructure. The first 6 here are brought into the software automatically. They just exist there. But then you can create custom roles depending on what your needs are. So as an example, I've also got this print job report manager. And in this case, the report manager, there's somebody that logs into this system, and they're going to look at PrinterCloud like it's a reporting console. When they log in, what they'll see is the section reports. They're not going to see a lot of the other stuff that I've showed you in this demo so far. And they're going to be able to come to this section, print job records, and they'll be able to run reports here. So I can go in and run different reports based on the prints that are happening in my infrastructure and get some really good granular insight into those. So there's overview reports that give you kind of a bird's eye view of your infrastructure. And then there's also more granular reports. So these overview reports include charts and graphs and things like that to help you synthesize that data. But then these other reports that are a little more granular, I think they're cool because they can be very useful in examining behaviors in your print infrastructure and making relevant changes. So I set my dates here, right? I'm having this go through this period of time to capture some different jobs. And again, also searchable here. So I could search for just departmental information. I could search just printers and populate that records report based on that criteria. What I'm getting is the date, the time, the username, the job title, the computer that it was printed from, the manager of that department as well, department information, printer, the document name will come over here. Again, one thing that we see in healthcare is sometimes HIPAA compliancy concerns. Something that's important to remember is that the jobs themselves do not go through our PrinterCloud management console, right? They're direct IP print jobs. So we're not capturing images of these things. We're not picking up personally identifiable information when we capture this reporting information.
So that comment is very timely, and I want to make sure I'm gonna throw in a context-based question here from Alfred. What security is in place from PrinterCloud that protects the org and its HIPAA compliancy? Can you see data sent through the service? I think you just answered that, but can you just make sure you kind of stress that? But I also think it's also a good time to say, yes, this is a cloud service, but you guys also offer an on-prem option as well.
Yes, we do. So, and again, like I had mentioned, the features that you're seeing in PrinterCloud, you'll also see in Printer Installer. We keep them very consistent and up to date across the board. In fact, our on-prem has just a few more features in that it offers a data warehouse that allows you to create your own custom reports that would even exist outside of the scope of what I'm showing you here. So, but for the most part, yeah, full feature parity. And yes, healthcare is a major vertical for us, so we are on point with our compliancy there.
All right, so I'm going to ask a few questions, and then and it might segue into kind of the mobile topic as well. But a couple questions on thin clients. So can you elaborate kind of on your thin client support? And then I'm going to kind of couple this with another question that came in. Kind of highlight what you do with a thin client. The example was given was Wise, and my list is going all over the place. I apologize. Where is it? Collaborate on thin client. Yeah. So can you elaborate on thin clients, and then
Sure, I can just kind of
uh,
go into that a little bit.
and then talk about kind of thin clients in general, what you support, but also in a non-persisted scenario. So, the example Stefan gave is rolling carts. Can this change printers if the cart is moved from the fifth floor to the third floor? And I think I actually know the answer. That's simple answer is yes, but I'll let you elaborate.
Yes, the simple answer is yes. So I'll just kind of, that's a lot of questions bundled into one, so I'll just kind of approach the whole subject. So as far as what we support, we're going to support fat, thin clients, and zero clients as well. We have some best practices for configuration. Basically, what we can do from an install perspective is we can go on the Citrix server or on the endpoints. On the Citrix server, we just install the client onto the Citrix server, and we'll put it into a remote desktop services mode. So what that means is we're changing the registry key there to allow it to support multiple simultaneously logged in users. So we can deploy session printers into the sessions using the deployment assignments that are based on the endpoint device. Now, on the endpoints themselves, we can install the client on the endpoint and install printers using the deployment assignments that I already talked about. And we can redirect those printers into the session as auto-created printers, right? So we can do session printing, we can do auto creation of printers. We can do, so as far as the endpoints are concerned, like as we discussed, we're putting it on the server. So the printers are located, they're locally installed on the endpoint and redirected up into the sessions. The print jobs are sent natively compressed down to the ICA to the endpoint, where they're locally spooled and rendered and then sent to the printer. And this is done without any additional like hardware, any other compression-based clients. We can just utilize what you're currently doing with like a Citrix UPD. So like in a zero client scenario, maybe we wouldn't help as much with the compression, but we're able to eliminate like the additional WAN traffic that can be associated with like triple crossing your WAN when printing within Citrix, as you're bouncing across from the actual rendering of the job, things going to the print server. So it's more of a latency-based benefit at that point. But yeah, session printing is done, auto creation of printers is done. We'll also support roaming profiles. So we kind of cover the whole scope. It just kind of depends on what your deployment strategy is and where we can step in and kind of help with those things. Did I get most of the questions that were asked in that?
Yeah, yeah. And then one of the other shout outs I'll give is I know you guys have a really good integration with IGEL in the IGEL OS. And then you also have a great integration, well, some good integration with Imprivata. So you guys, like you said, are very healthcare heavy, but also play very well with the thin client device as well. All right. So the other question, one more question before I'll let you jump in kind of in the mobile stuff.
Sure.
So can you talk about, can this work with Azure AD, Office 365, to deploy using groups for Azure AD,
Sure.
Azure Domain Join Services? Sorry.
Oh yeah, no worries. So right now that's under development for us. So at the moment we support Active Directory from that perspective. Our development cycle is we have intentions to include Azure. That's a big target for us, especially as we look at some healthcare accounts and things like that. We know that that's a very important thing, especially as we start to scale this printer cloud platform. It was originally designed as an SMB service, and that's where we launched it at first with the goal to get to enterprise. And now that we have enterprise customers that are actively using our Printer Cloud platform, it's become increasingly important for us to support Azure, AD, and as well as look at things like Okta. So that is on our development roadmap right now to support those. To date, we do not support those. We'll only support Active Directory for that authentication. And that actually does help us segue pretty effectively into the pull printing or follow me printing and mobile printing.
Yeah.
So right now,
Uh,
oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
and just to interject really quick, Pablo asked a great question. Pablo, when I cut over, I'll show you a cool screenshot of the integration, but they are integrated directly into IGEL profiles. So I'll try to get something up to show you guys. So
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we're just embedded right there. You can push out our client along with the authorization code and note the URL of your server, and that saves you the hassle of trying to even worry about deploying the client in the first place, which is still pretty easy. But yeah, it's a great integration. So maybe if we could show that on your screen, that'd be cool.
yeah,
Pete. So
and just to add some light, and Garrett, I'll cut you over to staff just so you can see the questions. But Garrett put up that identity services integration is a priority for PrinterLogic this year. So this is inclusive of Azure AD, Okta, and Google Identity Services. So this is a high priority for PrinterLogic. And as a ex-product manager, I can say these guys are great at getting their features into the products.
perfect. All right. So one last thing I did want to touch on here briefly while I'm on this page actually is that we'll track USB printing too. Uh, the scope of management here is for TCP/IP printers, obviously in Printer Cloud, but we will capture USB prints and help you kind of monitor that part of your infrastructure. Just wanted to make a quick note of that. Now, as we were talking about transitioning away from the core product and moving into the kind of the other features that we talked about, secure printing, mobile printing, I want to talk to you about follow me printing. We call that pull printing in our solution, but you're probably a little more familiar with the follow me print term. Basically, what we're doing in this is we're creating a single point our printer to print to, and then allowing end users to have multiple options for releasing that print job. And this is where that Active Directory currently comes into play. We do require Active Directory authentication for our advanced printing modules. So whether it's follow me printing or iOS printing or Android printing or something like that, we'll require that Active Directory authentication. And like Garrett's note said, we're prioritizing development for those other authentication platforms as well to kind of open that up to you. For now, what we do is we use a test, or I've got this test environment, I've got this service host. This is a client that runs in your current environment rather than on the server, so your jobs aren't actually being shipped out up to the Printer Cloud server. Instead, those are held locally on your workstation, and we allow you to basically create that profile. So here I've got this pull printer. This is a universal virtual queue. So if I check the port here, you can see no IP address ranges associated with this. This is just a mechanism that allows us to locally hold a job until it has a release point defined. And what's cool about this is I can print my job right here to this printer. And just as an example, I think I've got a little architectural overview of the Printer Cloud solution that we'll be distributing to you. So here I can go File, Print. I can print that to my pull printer. And so now this job is going to be held. I can step over here. This is my Printer Cloud portal. So you'll notice here, it's just the same environment that we saw before. There's the administrator account. There's the end user account. And at the end, it says release. This is how I access my release portal from any network connected device. So there's my architectural overview. I can choose to release it from my workstation and choose a printer this way. And any printer that I've been given access to in my self-service portal will be an option here. Okay, so we have a full list. It doesn't necessarily have to be an installed printer on your workstation per se. Just any printer that you've got access to that has a license for this feature will be able to be selected, and you can release that job this way. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to do that from your workstation. Otherwise, you just define the endpoint when you print. For us, we can do that with your mobile devices. So you can imagine here, let's say that I've got a little tablet or maybe this is my phone or something like that. If I'm on the network and I can connect to this portal here, then I have the ability to select whichever document I want to and release that document. So that's kind of the feature set there for the pull printing configuration. And then also I have embedded in the console the ability to authenticate there and release my jobs there. We're a little bit more built out in the on-prem version with the manufacturers that we support, but we are moving to a common CPA that will allow us to support pretty much any major vendor from the Printer Cloud portal. So this is kind of what it looks like, just to give you an idea. I'd walk up to any machine that has that visual interface, and this is what I'd see. I'd be able to authenticate or scan my own badge, and then see my held jobs and manage those from that console interface. We also support an RFIDs configuration where you can do a simple badge release. So you can just scan your badge and it will release the most recent job that you've printed, or release everything from the queue. We also have the settings to be able to purge the queue as well. So I'll close out of that and get back into the administrator console. So that's what we do with pull printing. We also have a flavor of that called secure print, where instead of defining the endpoint at the time of releasing of the job, you actually predefine the endpoint. When you print your document, it's going to be securely held at that defined endpoint until you go and physically authenticate at the device with your badge or your credentials to release that job. So that tends to be a really popular one, especially in our healthcare environments.
Cool.
Moving along just a little bit to those mobile printing features, just to give you an idea. So we do iOS printing, and it's going to be native to your iOS infrastructure. So if you've got those devices, basically you're going to be able to select your printer. It's going to be a PrinterLogic published printer, but you'll be able to natively see that through iOS and be able to release your job just the same way that I showed you here. This is where you're going to define the printer. We also do email printing. I would say that's really kind of a good catch-all in a BYOD configuration. What you're able to do is basically anything that can send email, we can route the job either specifically to a printer that you define in the to field and give each one of these printers a name, basically kind of an alias that's routed off of a single mailbox, and allow you to print that way, where it will print the body of the email and any attachments. And we'll support both, we use LibreOffice for the rendering of the files, or if you have a Microsoft Office key, you can enter that key and use that for the rendering of your files. And then you'll also have the ability to do kind of a pull print scenario with your email printing if you choose that flavor of email print. In that case, we set up a single mailbox that's used for email printing, and we don't add the aliases into it. Instead, what we do is we allow you to have your jobs automatically sent to this portal. So it does a reverse lookup and sees who you are and sends that job to your unique release portal, just like the pull printing does. And then you will see your email submitted job here, and then you can choose a printer to release it to after the fact. So a couple different options there. The last thing I'd want to touch on with the email printing is we also offer guest printing. In this case, you can set it up so a guest can print to a printer. You just have to know that printer name, like its alias, like we talked about, and then you send it to that. It's going to do that reverse lookup, like I mentioned. If it sees that you're not a user in Active Directory, then it will route you through the guest print privileges that the administrator defines. And we can limit basically how many pages somebody prints in a 24-hour period and force a black and white profile on them, even if the default for that particular printer is a color default. And then again, it's beholden to your existing security infrastructure defined by your email server. So whether that's Exchange or whatever it may be, you can kind of whitelist and blacklist domains as well. So you'll have that ability. And those are broken out a little bit differently in terms of licensing. So all of those advanced modules would be considered add-ons. There's two different types of licenses. You can go and manage your pull and secure licenses and as an add-on to your base printer. Like here I've highlighted printer 11. All the features I talked about at the beginning are added to this printer that way. If we add on the additional modules, it's just a license, and then you kind of define the flavor of how you distribute that license. So if you go with secure printing or pull printing or both. It's just consuming that single license for the printer object that you're dealing with. And again, that's just how we license across the board. So I have a printer 11 here and a printer 11 color and black and white. Each of these is going to consume a license in our software. We are licensed per printer, basically, is what it comes down to. But in this case, I have 2 queues for 1 printer, so that would consume 2 licenses, just to give you an idea of how we're looking at that in your infrastructure. But I think that's most of what I wanted to cover, at least at a high level.
Yeah.
Do you want to
So
get into some questions, or do you want me to
yeah.
step into
So
the Q&A?
So what I'm going to do is jump in really quick. So to answer Pablo's question earlier, if you look on the screen, I kind of have I have the profile settings up for IGEL. So if you're not familiar with IGEL, definitely reach out, and I can definitely fill you in on IGEL. But they do have PrinterLogic built in by default into their what's called a profile, and you can manage your settings centrally across all your thin clients, whether they're IGEL branded or converted. So just to give you a sneak peek into that. All right, so let's talk about really quick. So first off, if there are any questions, please get them into the Q&A dialogue. And Eric, if you take a look at the Q&A dialogue, I'm going to pause and let you maybe answer some out loud. There are a lot of great questions, a couple around spooling, couple around, I think the easy one, and I'll let you take a quick answer on that just to save me a little time. But can this work side by side with the current print server? And we move off print server system? And I think the answer is yes, but I'll let you give your quick elevator answer.
Yeah, well, just like you put it, the answer is yes. Basically, what we can do is we can bring that print server under management with a print server link and allow you to bring those queues directly into our interface. So you could manage side by side the direct IP printers that you might typically find in the scope of our service, or you can manage printers that exist on your print server as well, and use kind of all the features that you saw me demonstrate for the most part in associate with those managed print servers.
Sweet. All right. And so take a look at the questions, and I'll pause and let you answer a few. All right. So who is XenTegra? XenTegra is a partner of PrinterLogic. We're a platinum partner of Citrix. Andy, our CEO, founded the company under the simple premise of we want to enable our customers and our prospects, but also form true partnerships with anybody we partner with. So we truly believe in our mission, and if you ask any partner we work with, they'll say that XenTegra is probably one of the better partners that they interact with today. Recently XenTegra was just chosen as the Worldwide Partner of the Year for Citrix. So congratulations to Andy. He's built a great company. So who is XenTegra? I'm just going to keep it simple. We are a reseller and an implementer of PrinterLogic and other solutions within the Citrix VDI server-based computing stack. So if you want to find out more about PrinterLogic and potentially get a POC up and running and actually buy the product, you can come through us. We can help you get it up and running. We can answer all your questions. And then also the cool thing is we also host this in our MSP. So we can do a hosted managed scenario as well. So we have this not only standalone where you manage it, but we can also bring it into our MSP and manage it for you. So 2 options for you to consider if you are looking at PrinterLogic. So here's a snippet of some of our customer base. You can see we cover a lot of verticals. Our strong suits are healthcare, manufacturing, finance, law, education. So we have a pretty good, we cover a lot of different industries, and it all depends on the region, but we do cover the whole US. And again, we pride ourselves on this simple premise of free events. So we do a lot of technical training. So if you bookmark this link, http://zentegra.com/events, you'll see that we have a lot of great, cool hands-on workshops, webinars, etc. Our next webinar is going to focus on Office 365, and we're going to talk through the different things you might not be taking advantage of when you're looking at Office 365 and Azure. So again, some calls to actions. If you are interested in a POC, let us know. If you're interested in acquiring PrinterLogic, we can quote it out. And if you want a deeper demo with Eric and team, we can arrange that. So again, and then finally, we can come in and help you implement this. And again, we have two models. We can come in and do it in your environment, or we can host it in our environment. So those are the kind of the 4 calls to action. And one other thing I want to talk about before you guys jump, and for those who left early, they're going to be sad they missed out. We are offering a $200 off discount to Citrix Synergy. So if you are interested, please, reach out to myself and/or your XenTegra sales rep, and we can get you $200 off Citrix Synergy. So that's $50 more than the early bird special. And if you renew through us, we can get you more money off. So we can get you there potentially free. So if you don't believe me, reach out. I'll educate you on how that works. All right. So any final Q&A before I wrap and hand off? Any last comments to Amy and team? Eric, any questions you want to answer live?
Not any that I think I really have time for in what we've got left. I've been kind of responding in the queue here. So if that stays open, I can keep responding. But
yeah, so the good news is I'll send you the questions, and any questions we did not get to, I'll make sure we get answers over to you. You guys asked a lot of good questions, and I recognize a lot of the names. So, and Jason, you know how to get a hold of me. So if you want to reach out, we can set up some more time with Eric and team. And then finally, here is the crew. If you guys have any questions at all, definitely jot our emails down. You're going to get an email from me. You're going to get a recording. Feel free to share it with colleagues, post it on Twitter, LinkedIn, show off how cool PrinterLogic is, and I'll pass the mic to any last comments to Eric and Amy. Uh-oh, we're getting some radio silence. All right, so Eric, I want to thank you for joining. Awesome demo. And yes, he does look like Zach. So if you guys have the privilege to meet him, funny guy. And Amy, as always, a pleasure working with you guys. So again, if you guys are interested in acquiring, let us know. We can help you. We can get you a deeper demo, and we can answer any other questions you may have. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for taking time today. And hopefully you're joining me at 1 o'clock. I'm going to be diving into what's new around Citrix Workspace, and it's going to be the Pete version of it. So if you're interested, head over to our site, sign up, and it's going to be a fun time. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody, and have a great rest of your days.